Today my 10-year-old sister walked into my room wielding a vibrator as a sword. What times in your life have you literally been speechless? While babysitting, the two kid siblings, boy 11, girl 7, had a friend over who was the age as the boy. The brother and sister were wrestling like usual next to the friend. The friend then said the most disturbing thing an 11-year-old can say. He said, "It looks like she wants you to eat her pee." I was speechless. This is the first time in my life I actually made the little weird wide-eyed face that everyone always posts. I feel like just posting it wouldn't do justice. In high school, my best friend pleaded for me to go with him to this girl's house because she had a friend over. He wanted to get in her pants, and her parents were gone for the weekend. I unenthusiastically agreed and he promised it wouldn't be that bad. Turns out her friend was a 6 feet 1 inches black girl named Sade. I am a 5 feet 7 inches Korean, so we were a match made in heaven. As the night pressed on and we drank her dad's beers, Sade suggested we tell our dirtiest secrets. She wanted to go first, but only if we promised to tell a secret that would be as secret as hers. We reluctantly agreed, unsure but excited to where this might be going. She began saying that her and her ex were very close and she doesn't know if she will find anyone she will love more. She followed that by saying her and her boyfriend would make their own popsicles in those old school plastic popsicle trays that was a mixture of milk, sugar, and his sperm, and they would eat them together. There was no chance I could top sperm pops. When I was about 7-8 years old, I came across a condom in the school sandpit. I used condom. I told a couple of older kids nearby about it. They gathered around and stared at the rubbery snake skin, attracting the attention of a 5-year-old kid who had no idea what it was nor our fascination with it was. He picked it up so he could try and figure out what it was. We all stepped back as though he were holding a live grenade. The kid was puzzled by our reaction and started waving it around. He decided to escalate the situation by putting it in his mouth and chewing it. Oh god, no. I once took a bunch of my sister's tampons, tied them to my bike and rode around the neighborhood when I was like 8. I remember the look on my parents' face when I returned home. Dear god, why? Not too bad as long as you took them out of a cabinet and not the garbage. I was around 7 or 8 at that time and I was playing in my dad's car that was parked in the garage when I found a used condom behind the back seat. Not knowing what it was, the first thing that came to mind was hand glove. So I proceeded to squeeze my hand in it and proudly went to show it off to my parents that were in the kitchen. The mortified look on my parents' face as I showed off my hand glove and how pale white my dad became. My mom quickly yanked it off my hand screaming and washed and scrubbed my hand while she continued screaming at my dad. Turns out she never knew about the condom and A few years later I discovered what W meant. They divorced a few short years after. I definitely blamed myself for that one. You shouldn't be so hard on yourself. A very uneducated girl, but still a friend, was talking to me once about how she had gotten pregnant, and that she was worried that her baby might not have all its limbs because not all the sperm got in. Cue speechless. A friend in college was a cheerleader, and she needed help with a charity event her cheerleading squad was doing. Some cheer competition with a ton of kid cheerleader teams competing in their age groups. So I, being a gentleman, agree to help out her squad. We get there and the organizers have t-shirts for the volunteers to change into in the back. So we're all in the back conference room putting on the t-shirts and grabbing breakfast when the Baltimore Ravens cheerleading squad comes in and starts changing from street clothes into uniforms. In front of all of us. I'm the only straight guy there. Turns out they were there to support the local cheerleading teams or something. I had no idea they were going to be there. The entire Baltimore Ravens cheerleading squad in various states of undress, right there in front of me as I'm putting cream cheese on a bagel. To put it mildly, I was speechless. Right there in front of me as I'm putting cream cheese on a bagel. To put it mildly, I was speechless. I think this is more accurate. 10 years ago, I opened the bathroom door only to see my naked 13-year-old brother playing with a football in an empty bathtub and singing Paul Anka's Diana. I just turned around and walked away. He never explained. I never asked. Dear sweet Jehovah, I hope this story is true. When my oldest daughter was 4, she did the same thing to the wife and I while we had dinner guests over. Look mommy, I found a sparkly sword, goddamn kids. Didn't anybody ever tell you that you always have to keep scissors, guns, and sex toys on the top shelf, otherwise kids will find them, and crap will go down. I was speechless when I found a photo in a frame that was of me on vacation as a child. In the background, either my dad or my uncle has his full genitalia hanging out over his shorts, in plain view of the camera. Also when my mom decided to teach me about tampons by demonstrating the procedure of putting them in and taking them out on herself. My mind treats it like a nightmare, but I know it was real. Oh god, why? My mind treats it like a nightmare, but I know it was real. This line took that story from mentally scarring to hilarious. Your dildo story has compelled me to share one of the fondest memories of a good friend of mine named Jordan, RIP. When we were teenagers, we would often hang out together at our friend Matt's house and smoke weed. Well, one fateful day while we were enjoying our circle time, Jordan snuck off into Matt's mom's room and happened upon her modestly sized black dildo. Well, he didn't so much as happen upon it as dig through all her stuff looking for it because he was sure she owned one. He proceeded to sneak it back into Matt's room and hide it under his pillow. None of us noticed this, and a while later Matt goes to lay on his bed, and when he put his arms under the pillow he got what has probably been the nastiest surprise of his life. The look on Matt's face when he pulled his surprise present out from under his pillow and Jordan yelled, "What are you doing with your mom's dildo?" makes me burst into laughter every time I think back on it. Jordan then proceeded to try and make Matt hit himself in the face with it. He was a little bigger and did manage to further Matt's emotional scarring. After Matt managed to regain control over his mom's dildo, he realized he would need to return it and he had no idea where she kept it. Jordan coaxed Matt into asking him nicely where he had found the dildo so he could return it and avoid an awkward conversation with his mom. This is how Jordan created the game Hide the Dildo. Almost every time after that, whenever he came to visit, he would attempt to sneak off and was often able to successfully hide the dildo somewhere in Matt's room. Matt eventually had to get in the habit of regularly checking his mom's dildo location to ensure it was there, and if it wasn't he got to play find the dildo and comb his room looking for it. Jordan died 3 years ago at the age of 22, leaving behind a fiance and unborn, at the time, son. When I reminisce about him with friends, Hide the Dildo is one of our favorite stories to have a laugh over. TLDR, one friend inadvertently creates the game Hide the Dildo with the dildo of another friend's mother, a race against the clock to avoid an awkward conversation. P.S. I believe Matt was always able to locate the dildo. When I was in my second year of university, I was known as the kid who slept through everything. I actually still am, but I keep telling myself I'm getting better. This one day I was sleeping through an ODES lecture, and something woke me up. I don't know what it was, but I do know that as soon as I began rubbing the sleep from my eyes, the kid beside me slammed his head into his desk hard. I looked over at him somewhere in a sleepy haze of thoughts that he had fallen asleep too, and had just done so with enough force to smash against his desk. Being a good guy, I reached over to try to wake him up, because he had hit himself pretty hard. Then I felt that he was totally rigid, and I thought, oh crap, this kid is having a seizure right beside me. I've taken a couple of first aid courses, and I used to be a lifeguard, but I totally blanked. I tried supporting his head, and then I called around the class for if he had any friends. One guy came over, but didn't know any more than I did. Here's where I was left speechless. The prof, hearing some commotion, turns around. I made eye contact with him, with pleading, oh god, please help me, eyes. Of course, the rational course of action was to turn back around and keep on teaching the class. The kid eventually woke up, and I kind of gathered that he epileptic. He was international, and English wasn't his first language. We bumped into each other later that day, and he thanked me. I never did blackmail that prof for a day, like I should have. That professor is a freaking butthole. I'm epileptic and applaud that you did what you could for him. There needs to be people who understand epilepsy. People can be so oblivious. When I was in high school, there was a bar that was converted to a teen hangout spot where most of the cigarette pot smoking, troublesome teens would hang out on the weekends. The owner was really cool and had the best intentions to have spot we could spend our evenings on the weekends that didn't involve alcohol or drugs. To his detriment, drugs were sold there and most of us would get hammered in the parking lot and go back in to play pool darts and talk about stupid high school crap. So one night I'm rocking a good buzz from drinking oldie English 40s, and out of nowhere this pack of what must have been 12-year-old girls walks in wearing their mom's clothes. I'm talking thongs pulled up to their armpits, high heels 4 sizes too big, sports bras and god-awful amounts of makeup. It was almost like a scene from a movie. These little wannabes walk in and start asking for cigarettes and offering BJs. The music stops. Everybody is at a silent standstill and everyone is focused on them. These girls thought they had just become famous, when in all reality everyone in the room had a major WTF moment. I just stood there, absolutely dumbfounded for what seemed like an hour, but soon realized these children needed to GTFO. Now, the owner was so old he couldn't make out their age, so I just walked up to them and acted like a bouncer. I asked for ID, and when they couldn't produce, I just straight up kicked them out, told them to never come back and they actually started crying. I'll never know what happened to those girls, but I'm certain that I was able to preserve what was left of their childhood for at least that single night. I'm fairly sure if they were offering BJs their childhood was long gone. I found my heterosexual friend who was higher than an airplane making out with a shake weight. For the record, I wasn't high and I didn't join in. I just opened my mouth prepared to say something, but then I walked out. I misread that as an airplane making out with a shake weight was not as high as he. Went to a hockey game with my dad last March, and at one of the intermissions, and a few beers down, a woman proposed to her girlfriend at center ice. The crowd went wild, even more so when the newly engaged couple kissed. Everyone was cheering, and the guy sitting next to my dad leans over and says nothing better than girl on girl, to which my dad replies even better than red tube. A momentary lapse in judgment on my part resulted in me asking my dad how he knew what red tube was. Your mother and I don't have sex that much. I gotta get off somehow. Speechless. Your mother and I don't have sex that much. I was supposed to give a speech about the difference between literally and figuratively, but as I arrived at the seminar and looked on the docket, it was removed from the agenda. I was literally speechless. Slow claps. Not me, but my friend was called a young man by her PE teacher. She walked in late without a hall pass and he shouted to her, "Excuse me, young man, please come over here and explain to me why you're late." She turned around, glared at him, and continued walking. He realized what he had done, so he didn't stop her. Oh, did I mention that the PE teacher was my dad ? This happened to me a lot in junior high. Got kicked out of the girls' locker room once by other girls who thought they'd been infiltrated. Feels bad, man. I walked into a friend of mine's lab to engage in some witty banter as overworked physicists are apt to do. I am female and somewhat well endowed in the posterior department, though not fat. In the midst of our banter, he insulted me in some banal way. I told him to eat my butt. His reply, "It would be quite the meal." I had abso-freaking-lutely nothing to say to that. Best comeback ever. I think he figuratively wanted a piece of said aforementioned butt. In undergrad I decided to cut my hair into a mullet for a fraternity party that weekend, and to later cut off the rest for a drug test. The party comes and goes without incident. Instead of cutting my mullet off, I just wore a hat for a few days. The following Tuesday, John Roberts, Chief Justice of US Supreme Court, for those outside the states, came to lecture at our law school. I went and was seated in an overflow room. I waited for at least an hour for him to come to our room and take questions. Upon his arrival, I was the first for him to call on, at which time I stood up and was asked by his aide to remove my hat. I just stood there for a second and stared, lest I reveal a mullet in front of 120 people and John fricking Roberts. After this one-sided exchange, I hung my head and scurried the frick out of there. You could hear a pin drop. I'll never know what anyone said once I left. TLDR. Refused to take off my hat while addressing John Roberts. Shamefully left the room in silence. John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for most of those inside the US. When I went on vacation with my parents, it was 2 AM in the morning. I was on Reddit. Would you expect any less of me? And I hear my dad tell my mom, I want you to paint me like one of your French girls, Jack, and frick me in the butt. I didn't make eye contact for the whole 2 weeks. And that was day 1. Day 4. The sounds from the other room are getting louder. They called front desk saying the mattress broke underneath them while they were sleeping. But I know why. My friend was a lifeguard and camp counselor at Awaka, and there was one girl who was slightly odd and didn't really fit in with the other girls. She had some Aspergery qualities and was around 12. One day when swimming in the pool, someone, maybe one of the real young kids, took a huge crap in the pool. All of the girls started screaming, and while the adults were prompting everyone to get out of the pool safely and control the chaos, the awkward girl, in an attempt to be a hero and save the day, grabs the crap log with her bare hand and waves it above her head in triumph, yelling, "Don't worry guys, I got it," and brought it to the bathroom. I'm sure everyone at the pool was left speechless. Or, she just wants to fit in. Okay, I was a big Asterix fan as a kid, and in one Asterix in Switzerland, the locals all have a party when they have a big pot of melted cheese and they stick bread on swords, knives, and dip it into the cheese. In addition, they drink wine, laugh, merriment ensues, etc. So I was about 6. My mum had friends over. It was boring as heck, and I think we could do with some cheese and swords and stuff. So I shout out that we should do what Asterix referred to it as. "Hey everyone, let's have an orgy." Freaking Asterix. Freaking with my knowledge of the English language. Your knowledge of the English language is right. A Roman orgy was something like 95% drinking, eating and shouting, and maybe 5% people having drunken sex off in the corner. We misuse the word something wicked. She is probably gonna play with it until your mum catches her, or she makes a discovery while experimenting with massage. Mum found out later on anyway when she took it down and asked if she could massage her with it. Mum said it was for her groin problems and told her to put it down. She was trying not to laugh though. Aha. Better hiding spot required, mother. Mine can't even compare to this, but here goes. So I'm a computer gamer and I've accumulated some old computers over the years. They all work. They are just not very up to date in any way. Well, my mom doesn't do much other than store pictures and Microsoft Word, so when her really old POS died, I figured I'd be a nice son and give her one of my old ones. Fast forward 2 years. At restaurant with GF and mom. Out of nowhere mom says, "So anyways, I found your P on your computer." She does not say this quietly at all. I reply, "That's great mom. Why don't we just yell for the whole place to hear?" To which she says to my GF, "It's not a big deal. It was almost good to just find out that you were normal and liked girls." This conversation then continued more into areas that are awkward. FML. Well, that's entirely your fault for not deleting the P off a computer you were giving to your mother. So one day I was beating away at the meat when I hear footsteps. Too late. I realize it's my mother. She walks in with me with my hands on my schlong and 2 girls scissoring on the computer screen. Possibly the most awkward situation I've been in, ever. I was applying Prep 8 with a mirror on the floor, squatting over the mirror completely naked when my dad walked in to ask me for a book that I had borrowed from him earlier. He laughed so loud and hard, then walked across the room, whilst I was still naked, picked up a book and walked out of the room, only turning around when he got to the door to laugh again. My sister is going to France on a school trip this summer. We live in America and a friend of hers that is also going asked her if it was going to be winter in France this time of year. To which my sister replies no, that only changes between the northern and southern hemispheres, and then her friends proceeds to ask what's a hemisphere. Oh yeah, and they are both seniors in high school. When I was younger, I was playing N64 with my sister. It used to be in my parents' room. We were playing. I lost and was dinking around. I pulled out what I thought was the thing that made Tickle Me Elmo vibrate. I played with it for a while. Years later I finally figured it out, and I immediately washed my hands. My sister to this day laughs to the point of tears when it's brought up. Plague. I won a prize I didn't know existed and was then asked to give a short speech about it. Couldn't think of anything other to say than, thanks. Once when I was like 10, I was at my friend's house. He was playing video games in the living room downstairs and his sister and I were looking around the laundry room. We were just exploring and looking at stuff when we found a purple vibrator with rubber nubs at the tip. We weren't sure what it was, so we brought it into the living room and started playing with it. We didn't put it in our mouths or anything. We did pet the cat with it though. His dad came down, saw what we were doing and turned beet red. He took it back, rushed into his room and told me to go home. I only now realize what really happened that day. So I started talking to this incredibly attractive girl. We talked for about 3 weeks, maybe a month. I realized she lived literally down the street from me. So after 3 dreaded weeks of friend zone time, I heads to her house to seal the deal. I asked her if she wanted to be more than just friends. She replied with sorry, you aren't dark enough. I replied with well, yeah, walked my butt home in confusion. You got 2 more words out than I would have in that situation. Cheers. Late to the party, but walked into my house to see my brother slapping his girlfriend in the face with his dong. Haven't seen him since. This one time, I put my head through an opening fewer than 10 centimeters wide. I came through bloodied and confused, left me speechless for months. All I did was eat, sleep, cry and crap. Oh hi now JPG. I volunteer at my local library every week. One day a sweet, little 6-year-old, I'm assuming, came up to me saying, excuse me, I'm wondering where 50 Shades of Grey is. Can you help me find it? I couldn't react because I was so speechless. So I pretended I didn't hear her, but I really hope someone didn't help her find it. Maybe it was for their mother because she was too embarrassed to get it herself. A guy once told me, and I quote, you are disturbingly attractive. I'd only known him for a few weeks at that point, and I was in the middle of texting my brother about Mother's Day when he blurted this out to me. I took it a compliment after my brain restarted, and we're fairly good friends now. Still made me WTF pretty hard though. My mom told me where she lost her virginity at 19 and pointed out exactly where it was on Google Maps. It was on some rug in some guy's apartment. My dad took my siblings and I to the same camping spot I was conceived at. That is the night I learned I was a busted condom baby. Years ago when I was a frisky teenager and experimenting with all kinds of things, a friend of mine invited me to vacation with his family at a friend's lake house. This is a multi-million-dollar house and absolutely beautiful. When we get there I come to find out that I will be staying in a room normally occupied by the teenage daughter of this other family I didn't know. Anyway, I got around to digging in her lingerie and putting some of it on. I think I was wearing nylons, a garter belt and a thong when out of nowhere my best friend's mother comes in, drunk, and sees me standing there in my getup. I was a runner back then and about 125 pounds and actually probably looked pretty hot. But in any case, she just stands there staring at me. I was more horrified than I had ever been in my life, but kinda froze and had no idea what to do. I was completely mortified, but she just smiled and said, I think you look better in that than I would, then walked away. Funny thing was that the next night I lost my virginity to her. I suppose that she realized that I was a little pervert and wouldn't mind. I didn't mind and in fact still fap to the memory years later. A long time ago my little bro did the same thing. Sort of. He came outside just as his older sisters were seeing who could hold in bong rips the longest and said, in the most country accent ever, have y'all seen that big ol' long white thing that vibrates? You know, it's always under mom's bed. I am not sure he has realized why he got a face full of smoke and 2 of us laughed until we puked. He is still a little innocent to ruin his life with that story. My guitar instructor once tried to convince me that the United States was founded on Christianity and that legalizing gay marriage would lead to old perverted men marrying children. I was speechless and to this day I haven't taken a lesson with him again. Whenever my father fills up my gas tank when I come home, I'm a broke college student, so having someone shell out the cash to do this for me is always a little overwhelming. Not as bad as me. I had a similar situation in regards to the OP, but the shoe was on the other foot. I was 8 years old, and we were in the process of moving in with our grandparents after my mom and her boyfriend broke up. After a few days of moving, I and my brother were looking around the boxes and bags of all of our stuff, finding things that we once thought were lost, like our SNES, and our copy of Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. Though, unbeknownst to both of us, Within one of the bags a dark, slightly see-through secret was lurking. So there we were, pulling things out of the boxes and bags, and from one of the bags I find this box. This black rectangular box with a plastic cover so the contents within can be seen. So I take it out and was trying to figure out what it was. I could see it was long, see-through pink, and overall, just weird. So I open the box and take out the object. I'm holding it up to the light, watching the light bend as it passes through it. Then I notice the bottom of this object had a black base with grooves. I turn it upside down and begin to fiddle with it, only to have it, to my surprise, start to shake very rapidly. I thought, as I held the foreign vibrating pink shaft. I turned to my older brother in excitement. "Look, I found a massager," I said, as I rubbed it all around my neck, back and face. My brother only stood there, without a single word until finally he said, "Give it." "No," I protested. "I found it first. That's not a massager." "Yes, it is. Why would it vibrate then?" I rebutted. "That's a dildo." Not knowing what a dildo was, I calmly responded. So as I continued to rub my face and neck with it, my brother left and returned with my mom seconds later. She confiscated it from me, and then my brother, sister, and I all had a talk with my mom about what dildos are. Oh, and in case anyone was wondering, the dildo was apparently my mom's ex-boyfriend's. When he had moved into our previous home, he had some bags that he put in the master bedroom closet, and that bag just happened to have been one of his bags, and it got mixed up with our stuff. TLDR, 8-year-old me rubbed my mom's ex-boyfriend's pooper pusher all over my face, and enjoyed it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.